Papers released from Osama bin Laden's hideout show a frustrated Al-Qaeda leader struggling to control an unruly network. For more, we're joined by North America correspondent Craig McMurtry in Washington. Now, how do these documents paint bin Laden and Al-Qaeda?
Well, essentially they paint him as an isolated figure, a micromanager, someone who was concerned about the future of the terrorist organisation, Al-Qaeda. He was worried about the competency of Al-Qaeda affiliates. It's interesting that they show that he didn't really have that much time for the American radical cleric Anwar al-Awlaki. He was based in Yemen and later, of course, was killed in a drone strike. It's important to note, though, that these are 17 documents of thousands seized by the Navy SEALs in that raid just over a year ago that resulted in Osama bin Laden's death. These documents have been chosen by US officials to be declassified and released on the anniversary of his death. They've been published by the Combating Terrorism Centre at West Point. But that being said, they show some human aspects to Osama bin Laden. He was worried about his children, urging family members to make sure they weren't being followed to the Pakistan compound, where, of course, he was hiding out. He lamented the fact that Al-Qaeda was was looking for targets other than direct major US targets. There was conversations about wanting to target Barack Obama, the US president, of course, and then General David Petraeus. Interestingly, there doesn't seem to be anything explicit in these documents anyway about what level of support he was or wasn't getting from Pakistan authorities, which is obviously a very, very sensitive issue. But in short, they paint a picture of someone who was isolated and someone worried about the future of Al-Qaeda.
And Craig, another sensitive issue is that of the Chinese dissident Chen Guangcheng. He's giving evidence right now by phone to a US congressional hearing. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this story is getting more and more extraordinary. I can't remember a diplomatic episode quite like this one. A short while ago, minutes ago in fact, presumably from his hospital bed in Beijing Hospital, Chen Guangcheng, this 40-year-old human rights activist in China, now at the centre of this diplomatic tug-of-war, phoned into a congressional hearing to make a direct appeal for the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, to meet with him, to come to his hospital. And really, for US officials, this is turning into a diplomatic nightmare. 24 hours ago, they thought they had a very neat solution, that they had an agreement with Chinese authorities. They were saying Mr. Chen had not sought asylum. They escorted him out of the safety of the US Embassy to a hospital. They told reporters that they had this deal where he would be reunited with his family, he would be allowed to stay in Beijing and study at university. Now there are reports that his family has been threatened, that his wife was tied up and beaten by Chinese officials. He's saying he was unaware of this when he agreed to leave the US Embassy, and he is pleading to be allowed to fly out with Hillary Clinton on her aircraft and for his family to come with him. And for the Secretary of State, who's actually in Beijing now pursuing sensitive talks, this is a really, really difficult problem.
So what's likely to be the reaction then from China and the United States, Craig?
Well, the Chinese government is essentially demanding an apology. The US ambassador there, Gary Locke, has given interviews describing the lengths the embassy went to reach out and bring Mr. Chen into the embassy, describing it as a mission impossible retrieval operation, that they went out. And there are separate reports of a high-speed chase to get him to the embassy. Now, Mr. Chen's supporters are saying that he really had no choice but to leave the embassy. They are suggesting that US officials made it clear that if he stayed at the embassy but didn't want to seek asylum, he would remain separated from his family. As to the way forward, it's really difficult to see how this does get resolved. It is a dangerous escalation of this issue. It throws up again, in the starkest way possible, the big differences between these two powers on human rights. And right now, US officials are saying they're not getting access to Mr. Chen. There are reports that he's under guard at the hospital, that no one's getting access to him, which makes this live phone call to the congressional hearing that's taken place just in the last few minutes even more extraordinary.
Craig McMurtry in Washington will keep across the story.
Okay, thank you.